Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, back for the sixth year in a row, we have our annual New Year's resolutions for anglers. That means we now have 5 resolutions from the past 5 years, plus 5 new ones for 2025, giving you a full list of 30 New Year's resolutions to choose from for this year. Which 5 will you choose? Find out all of that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
Welcome to the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk podcast. As always, we are brought to you by the fine folks over at American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. They should be the first place that you check whenever you're looking for brand new rods, reels, line, baits, apparel, used gear, because they're always running some of the best, most consistent sales on the internet, no matter what you're looking for. Like last week, I don't know if it's still there by the time you're listening to this episode, but last week they had 50% off all Fenwick world-class rods. Those rods are normally like $400-something bucks. They had them on sale for like $200 last week. All in-stock world-class rods, some of the hottest rods out there over the past few years that have been completely revamped. We've talked about it on the show before. You could have got them 50% off. That's why you need to check AmericanLegacyFishing.com regularly whenever you're on the internet. You never know what kind of deals they'll be dropping on any given day. All of that, plus the world's best selection of high-quality used gear. They have the best shipping, the most friendly customer service that I've ever experienced from a fishing shop. All of that from a great Midwestern retailer that actually cares about you and wants to make you happy as a customer. So go check them out, www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, you can use code TACKLETALK10. That's going to save you 10% off almost everything on the website. Some exclusions apply, but not many. Almost everything, 10% off with code TACKLETALK10 over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. Okay, folks, it is the new year, or I guess maybe almost the new year. I guess it depends on when you're listening to this. This episode technically comes out on New Year's Eve, so you may have, I guess, up to 24 hours before the New Year's actually hits. But let us be the first to wish you a happy, healthy 2025, full of good fortune and good fishing. And we'll hopefully help everybody with the latter part of that today as we get into this episode, because we're going to embark on our 6th New Year's resolutions for anglers episode. And I can't believe we just said that, because 6 years, holy cow, it's crazy to think we've been doing this episode for 6 years running. I guess we're all getting old at this point, but I couldn't be happier. This is one of my favorite episodes of the year because it is a lot bigger look at what we do as anglers and kind of what makes you feel rewarding, what's obviously going to help you catch more fish, be a better well-rounded angler, but also just kind of a better human as well. So for you newbies out there, this is something that we do every single year. To start off the year, we always come up with 5 brand new New Year's resolutions, again, specifically for us as anglers. And these resolutions are attainable, and they'll hopefully help you have a more enjoyable and successful year out on the water. Now, since we come up with 5 New Year's resolutions each year, that means we now have 5 years worth of old resolutions. So we have 25 total old resolutions, and then we're going to have 5 new ones, giving anybody that's listening to this up to 30 to choose from this year. So you don't have to pick the 5 that I unveil for 2025. You can make your own list. Some of you have been listening for, all 6 years at this point, so you're probably going to skew a little more heavily toward the 5 new ones we have at the end of the episode. But for those of you that have only been listening for a year or 2 years, we'll have a ton of options for you to choose from as we kind of recap these last few years. Year's. So as is tradition, I am going to very quickly go through the last 5 years of New Year's resolutions to get everybody up to speed and to remind you of your past options as far as choosing your resolutions for this year. So the first year we ever did this was at the end of 2019, heading into 2020, and those 5 New Year's resolutions that year were, number 1, learn to love a new lure or technique. So that meant obviously like forcing yourself to fish with a technique that you weren't quite comfortable in, but you knew caught fish. We all have a weakness, and we all have these lures that, again, we know work because you see them online, you see pros using them, you just know that they've been out there and they've been popular forever. You just have never had confidence in it. And so it's those specific lures that we're talking about. So for me, a long time ago, it was like wacky rigs, and I did this with chatterbaits way back in the day. I did it with scrounger heads. I did it with glide baits a lot more recently. Basically, you just have to force yourself to fish with those types of lures until you do start to have success, and then you feel more confident in those techniques. And then if you fast forward now, like some of those I just mentioned, you won't see me leave home now without a chatterbait, without wacky rigs, without a glide bait, and that's all because, again, I learned to love those lures. So you really have to sit there and think about what is one lure that I know works, that I have no confidence in, and then make yourself love that lure by forcing yourself to keep it in your hand. So that was New Year's resolution number 1 for 2020, learn to love a new lure or technique. Number 2 for 2020 was fish a very pressured body of water once a month. And this was very simple. This was our version, I guess, of like resistance training. Pick a very tough, pressured pond or body of water near you and fish it once a month for a whole year. I did this around here with a place called Delco Park in Kettering, Ohio. And I don't care about spot burning it because everybody that lives within 2 hours of Dayton knows about Delco Park. So I'm not really giving away anything there. And it is not a place really that I would recommend worth fishing anyway. But I fished it religiously once a month so that I saw all of the seasons at one of the most heavily pressured ponds in my area. And guess what? I got better. I started catching more and more fish as the year went on, all while adapting to those changing seasons. And then by the end of the year, I caught a 4 1/4 pounder out of that pond when people would have sworn that there was not a fish that big in that rinky-dink public pond. But then by comparison, other bodies of water didn't seem as bad because I had confidence on one of the worst bodies of water in my area. So other ponds, other lakes, creeks, and rivers seemed so much easier by comparison, which is why that resolution landed number 2 on the 2020 list, to fish a very pressured body of water once a month. Number 3 in 2020 was fish with 5 new anglers. And again, this is a very simple one, but extremely effective. I went from the guy that was always a little grouchy whenever I saw somebody fishing in or around quote unquote my spots, right? And then I went from being mad about that to actually knowing most of them and making that situation a lot less frustrating. There's a big difference between seeing a complete stranger fishing near where you want to fish and seeing one of your buddies fishing near or where you want to fish. And now I've met some of my best friends in the entire world just by straight up going up to people and starting to talk to them while I've seen people out fishing the same places that I fish. And people that I probably would have never interacted with without fishing are now becoming my lifelong friends. They're my best pals because of fishing. And that's the power of just going up and introducing yourself to people that you see out fishing and saying hi and being nice and cordial to your fellow anglers out there. Then eventually you guys end up fishing together, and that's how you make friends with similar interests as you. So this wasn't so much about taking 5 random people out fishing as it was meeting the anglers around you and getting to know them and going fishing with them, because those folks end up becoming your best friends in my experience. That could mean meeting them out on the water. It could mean meeting them at an expo. It could be meeting them on social media or online. There's a ton of different ways, but make more fishing buddies. Okay, number 4 in 2020 was target a new species. Again, very simple. New species or species, I guess, I don't know, however you do plural of species, teach you things about your current target species that you may not know. Like I learned from muskie more than I ever could have imagined, and that knowledge has now translated over to bass for me. So for instance, I learned the importance of being patient and making sure that you're not missing the opportunity at a fish that may be following your bait, but not committing until the last second. Muskie, obviously notorious for that, but bass do it too. And now with forward-facing sonar, we're seeing it in real time, just how many fish truly follow your bait at any given time without immediately hitting it. So that means not completely burning your bait in every time and pulling it immediately out of the water too quickly. For glides and big baits especially, give that bait a second at the end of your cast or make a quick turn with it at the boat, kind of like you do with muskie when you do the standard figure 8. Now you don't have to do all that obviously, but give it like a right or a left turn once before you pull it out of the water, and you'd be surprised how many fish are still following that bait at that point that you might not know, all the way up to the boat. So again, a lesson that I learned originally from muskie. So pick a species: catfish, carp, crappie, pike, muskie, peacock bass. Travel for a new species, whatever it may be. Step outside your comfort zone and target a new species. And then number 5 in our first year was schedule one out-of-state fishing trip. Talk about stepping outside your comfort zone. Schedule the fishing trip. We did a whole episode on this a few months ago, so I won't beat this dead horse, but just do it. None of us are getting any younger. The places that you've always wanted to fish or target that species that you've always had on your bucket list, they're waiting for you. It could be a 1-day trip. It could be a 5-day trip. It could be one state over. It could be in a different country. It doesn't matter. Get it on the schedule. Take that out-of-state fishing trip. So that was 2020. And then the next year in 2021, our New Year's resolutions were, number 1, try a new style of fishing. So that meant like ice fishing, fly fishing, or just some different type of fishing that you're not normally doing. I mean, there's such thing as like micro fishing for small species in tiny streams. There's a lot of different options, but again, just meant to push you outside your comfort zone a little bit and try a different type of fishing that's brand new to you. Number 2 in the year 2020 was fish small water. And this is a big one to me, right? I grew up fishing small water. I still love fishing small water. And some of my fondest memories are putting on an old pair of shoes and shorts or my waders and just getting in the creek and walking with a pole in my hand. You'd be amazed at the quality of fish that can hide in those little do-nothing creeks that you probably pass 10 times a day and don't even think about fishing. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If there are spots in that creek that are like thigh deep or hip deep, even if they're few and far between, there are fish in there. And we've had a blast, whether it's just like me solo or me and my buddy Jeff, me and my dad, where we'll just make a day of it and we'll park one truck at one bridge and then we'll get in the other truck and we'll drive to another bridge that's 3 or 4 miles downstream, and then we'll just get in and wade back upstream to the first truck. And we've probably had, 50 to 75 fish days in the summertime or spring or fall, just wearing out smallmouth on Neds and poppers and swim baits and wacky rigs, and it's just a blast. So when you get to that mile or two in the middle of that wade of that creek or that small river, and you get back to fish that hardly ever get targeted, you can have the time of your life because they literally just look like they've never seen a lure in their life, and those opportunities are harder and harder to find nowadays. They still exist in small water, but that only happens by getting in the water, getting a little dirty, and fishing that small water that you have around you. So if you're not doing that, you're missing out, but that's why it made our list in 2021 of New Year's resolutions. And then we go to number 3 for 2021, and that was leave your big Facebook groups. Real simple one here. Facebook fishing groups are just a cesspool of negativity and spot burning and, guess the weight pictures that everybody gets mad at, or someone posting a picture of their 4 dead smallmouth on a stringer with the caption, "Release in the grease," and then everybody gets mad at that. Nothing good happens in Facebook groups for fishing, trust me. So do yourself a favor, leave them and never look back. I either left or maybe not got kicked out of a few of them, but every single Facebook group I was in, I am no longer in, and it was one of the best things to ever happen to me. Shed the negativity, leave the Facebook groups, and just go fish. Number 4 for 2021 was go to a fishing expo. So fishing expos are the mecca of local fishing culture for sure. Now, I've been blessed through this kind of wild tackle talk journey to get to go to ICAST and the Bassmaster Classic Expo and all of these really cool kind of big productions. And again, they are very cool, but there's nothing like your local anglers, your local tackle makers, and your local knowledge at a local fishing expo. So ICAST and the Classic cannot touch your local fishing expo in terms of those things. It's invaluable. You only get it locally. So don't miss your local fishing expo, even if that means you have to drive a little bit. I mean, around here, there are tons of them. Indiana has a few. Michigan has a few. Ohio obviously has the big Columbus Fishing Expo. Pennsylvania has a bunch. There are plenty of opportunities to go see some really cool local tackle, hear some great seminars about topics that actually are important to you, and just hang out and meet a ton of local anglers who, just like you, are obsessed with fishing. And then number 5 in 2021 was Go Fishing Unplugged. And this one is important because it allows you as an angler to just decompress for a trip or two, leave the camera at home, leave the phone on silent or at home, I guess probably silent in case you get hurt or something and you need to call for help. So maybe don't do that, but leave it on silent. Do not look at it. Don't open your phone. Don't turn it on. Just only focus on fishing and nature. And I love a good fish picture as much as anybody else, but sometimes you just have to set all of that aside and fully embrace nature. And I'm not trying to be like some, hippy dippy guy over here, but that reset is important sometimes. We get so caught up in our fish pictures and weights and measurements and having a GoPro strapped to your chest to make some YouTube video or something, and you start to separate yourself from what got you into it in the first place. That ability to leave the entire world behind, to just shut out every bit of distraction and stress and your real world problems for a little while and just focus on trying to get a little green fish or a little brown fish to voluntarily eat a little piece of plastic. That's it. That's all that matters in that moment. And it just feels right. It's like, and I don't know, may actually be one of the things that we as humans were designed to do. And you can't fully take part in that phenomenon if you have your phone in your hand, if you have a GoPro strapped to your chest, and a 360 cam strapped to your forehead. So at least once a year, leave all that at home. So that takes us to 2022, where our resolutions were catch a fish on a homemade lure. So again, no cooler feeling in the world than a fish caught on a lure that you completely made yourself. And again, I think this probably goes back to like our caveman brain a little bit. Me make, me fish, me catch. And I just think you feel so accomplished, and it's just a totally different feeling when you're the one that makes the lure that catches the fish. I've been lucky enough to catch fish on homemade jigs, homemade spooks, homemade poppers. I even caught my 2 biggest muskie of my life on completely handmade bucktails. So make that a priority. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. I mean, shoot, you can go like buy a $10 microwave off Facebook Marketplace, buy a $10 soft plastic mold and a $1 Pyrex container at the thrift store, and you can make your own soft plastics. I'm not saying that you need to go out and spend $10,000 and start your own tackle company, but be a little crafty, right? Tie your own jigs, carve a spook out of a dowel rod, just do something fun and try and catch fish on a bait that you made yourself and see if that unlocks some sort of new feeling in you like it did in me, where it just adds another fun wrinkle to fishing. Now, number 2 in 2022 was find a new fishing show. And I know that sounds a little silly coming from someone that has their own fishing show and selfishly probably hopes that you listen to Tackle Talk, but I'm serious. Find other outlets to soak in even more information. Almost every single YouTube channel or podcast or website or email list or magazine, whatever it is, will provide some value to you. It's just a matter of, I guess, how much BS you may or may not have to sift through to find that valuable information. Some outlets are just more streamlined and straightforward, and I think we try to be in that camp here on this show, but that's not everybody's speed. Some shows or channels are just a little bit more laid back, they're a little bit more long form, and it just might take more time to find information that you want to retain, but I guarantee that it's in there somewhere. And obviously not everything that we say on this show is the gospel, right? It's not the end all be all. There are other people out there with other opinions, other experiences, and I just think it's important to not get all of your information from one source, no matter what that source may be. So find a new fishing show to consume. And there are 10 bajillion podcasts and YouTube channels out there now. Chances are, if you have a voice and you have access to electricity, you probably either have a podcast or a YouTube channel these days. So there are plenty to choose from. That takes us to number 3 from 2022, and that was quit a habit that will let you fish more. And this was for our listeners out there that may have something that they can afford to cut out of their life. So that could be like video games as an example I think we gave in the original episode. Maybe you cut down on the number of video games that you play, and that gives you more time to go out fishing. Maybe you quit, like vaping or something, and then you save more money by not vaping. You also save your lungs. That's great, I guess. But you save more money, and then you can buy more gear or gas money or whatever so that you can go fishing more. Maybe it's something as simple as just quit being lazy and binge watching Netflix all the time. Get off your butt, go out and fish. One of the biggest factors to success out on the water is time on the water. And if you're wasting that time with some other activity that's not positive or might even be detrimental to your health, stop it and just fish more. Now, number 4 in 2022 was fish a new style of tournament. And this could be an online tournament. This could be your local Tuesday nighters. It could be a wading tournament, kayak tournaments. There's so many different tournament opportunities nowadays that you should take advantage of some of them, even if you're not the biggest tournament person in the world. I'm not a big tournament guy, but every once in a while, it's nice just to kind of get the blood pumping and have a little bit more of a competitive factor to fishing. I don't enjoy that all the time. I don't even enjoy that the majority of the time, but every once in a while, it's just kind of a fun little difference to kind of break up the monotony of fishing. So give something new a try in the tournament space. Or if you've never fished a tournament at all in your life, just give tournament fishing a try in general with a buddy. And number 5 for 2022 was keep track of your trophies. Now, this means different things to different people. So for me, it's photos of my fish, obviously, but it's also keeping the physical lure whenever I break my PB. So I have the exact lures from each of my personal best species in a little display right here by my desk. So I've got right beside me a homemade green pumpkin flippin' jig with a Havoc Pit Boss on the back that I caught my PB largemouth on. I have the exact Chad Shad that I caught my PB smallmouth on. I have a chartreuse blackback KVD 1.5 that I caught my PB pike on. What else? I've got a homemade 8/8 bucktail that I made that I caught my personal best muskie on. And then I have, ironically enough, I guess, a buzz grub in here that I caught my personal best saw guy on. So yeah, you heard that right. My personal best saw guy came on a buzz grub. But each of those lures tells a story, and to me, those are my trophies. Other options obviously include like getting an actual mount or a replica mount made of your fish, or maybe even like a log of your trophy fish. I have a log of every largemouth that I've ever caught over 4 pounds in my phone with like the date, the time, the lure, all that kind of stuff. It could be something like that. It could be, like the Fish Ohio program we have here in Ohio. That's kind of our version of like a master angler program. Fish over a certain size qualify as a trophy catch, and then you get a commemorative pin for your first one that you send in every year, and then you get a gold pin if you complete 4 species in the same calendar year. And it keeps track of every one of your Fish Ohio fish entries, serving as like a trophy log, basically. So we spend so much time on the water chasing these trophies. I just think it makes sense to keep track of them and to honor them. So then, in 2023, our New Year's resolutions were fish more local baits. And look, I love a ton of baits from big companies from all over the country. I use them all, but some of my favorite baits are actually made locally here in Ohio. Like my favorite swim bait head is made by Jig Masters. They're out of Northern Ohio. My favorite soft plastic swim bait is a Big Joshy. They're made in Columbus, Ohio. So many of the fish I catch all year long are on that combo right there. A Jig Masters sled head with a Big Joshy swim bait. And that's an all Ohio combo right there. And that's just because I pay attention, I support my local bait makers, and in turn, they actually a lot of times end up becoming some of my favorite baits, regardless of brand. And that makes sense because local bait makers know what works around you. If they don't, they're probably not going to stay in business very long and they don't know what they're doing. So support your local bait makers and fish more local baits. Number 2 for 2023 was take better pictures. And the big word here is better. So for me, that means bringing my DSLR camera with me whenever I go out fishing and I'm taking pictures with like a little remote control that I have behind the fish. I get clear, professional photos to remember these fish by versus some blurry iPhone photo or some selfie. The preservation of that catch is important to me, and I want the photo to be quality. But that could also mean just getting like a tripod for your iPhone or something, or getting a GoPro to take pictures with. Something better than just an iPhone selfie. Immortalize those memorable catches with a quality photo. Don't make the picture an afterthought, I guess. Number 3 for 2023 was recycle your old fishing gear. This is simple but important. We all have a ton of fishing gear laying around that we'll likely never use. Find a good use for it. If it has value, trade it into somebody like American Legacy Fishing and get credit for it so you can buy new gear and declutter your current gear. If it's not got a whole lot of value to it and it can't be traded in, donate it to a local charity or wait until Bass Pro Shops does like their spring fishing classic, I think they call it, where they'll take like any rod or reel on trade-in in any condition, and then they give you a discount code too that you can use in the store. And then number 4 in 2023 was treat yourself to one new piece of high-end gear. And this was a big one because I'm a firm believer if you work hard, you should reap the rewards of your hard work. And for anglers, that means treating yourself every once in a while to a little better gear. But what's important is that this can be different for everybody. Maybe to you, treating yourself is finally pulling the trigger on that $25 jerkbait that you've been wanting to try. Or maybe that's up to like $150 handmade glide bait. Or it could be like, hey, I want to truly try some nice fluorocarbon for once and get away from like the $8 stuff I buy at Walmart. But it could also be all the way up to like, hey, I've had my eye on an NRX or a Fenwick World Class rod or some really high-end rod or reel. Treat yourself once. Don't go overboard. Don't spend outside of your means, obviously, but give yourself permission to get one new high-end piece of gear, whether that's $25 or $600, right? It just depends on your budget. Number 5 for 2023 was what we called sending the elevator back down to help people become better anglers. And this is more of a big picture thing, right? But it basically means if you're lucky enough to reach the top floor, always be kind enough to send the elevator back down to those that are still trying to get up to where you are. Help people just like somebody probably helped you. Mentor someone, give somebody advice, take somebody fishing to help them learn things. So for me personally, that means like the simple things. Like, I will be a guest on anybody's show that ever asks me to, because I remember when people came on our show when we were just getting started and they didn't have to. I mean, like a Bill Dance or Rick Clunn or Mike Iaconelli, Boyd Duckett, any of those guys early on did not have to come on Tackle Talk when they did, but they did. And that meant a lot to me back in the day, and it still does to this day. And it helped me, I guess, kind of get the confidence to keep this show going. And I'll never forget that. So that means paying it forward in that way. But it could also mean, any message that I get, I try and help anybody every time I can. Gear questions, technique questions, rod choice questions, questions about starting your own podcast or audio equipment. I try as much as I can to help everybody that writes in, because again, I remember when other people helped me do this type of stuff. And then finally, it obviously goes for straight up fishing stuff too, more broadly. So at one point, you didn't know how to cast a bait caster. You didn't know how to, work a jerk bait, or when to choose mono versus fluoro versus braid. You didn't know how to tie a Palomar knot, but now you do because you either worked hard to learn or someone was kind enough to help you learn. So help somebody else. I mean, that's kind of what we do with this show, right? Hopefully, this helps you learn a little each week, or you have something to think about each week to help continue to make you a better angler. And you can do that too in your own life. Send the elevator back down, help those folks that are trying to learn what you've been lucky enough to learn already. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second, but first, we are brought to you in part by Dakota Lithium Batteries. And one of the New Year's resolutions that's not on this list, but should be, is to make your battery worries a thing of the past in 2025. And the easiest way to do that is make the switch to Dakota Lithium this year. Focus on your gear, focus on technique, focus on catching more fish, not battery issues. My Dakota Lithium batteries have never failed me out on the water, while I've watched other friends with other battery brands have charging issues, cold weather issues, dead batteries when they thought they should still have plenty left. The easiest way to fix that is to drop that blue battery with the red top into your boat or into your kayak or your vehicle and forget about it. That's because Dakota Lithium batteries are twice the power of traditional batteries at half the weight. They're going to give you 5 times faster charging, 4 times longer life, and an 11-year warranty with every battery you buy. All of that, and we're going to save you money on your next battery purchase by using code TACKLETALK5. That's Tackle Talk, the number 5. That saves you 5% off and lets Dakota Lithium know we sent you. It's a win-win for everybody. So head on over to www.dakotalithium.com and be sure to use code TACKLETALK5 at checkout. Again, that's www.dakotalithium.com, the official lithium battery of Bassmaster. Okay, and then that takes us to 2024. So this past year, the New Year's resolutions were get involved with a local fishing charity, and this is one that meant a lot to me this year. We were lucky enough to be able to participate in Jackson's Memorial Fishing Derby, where you all helped make that possible. We provided new rods, reels, line, baits, terminal tackle, and a tackle box to every single kid that pre-registered for that event. And then we were able to make a $1,000 donation to AngelWorks in Jackson's name. And that was one of my favorite days of the year. I teared up more than once that day, just thinking about the impact that Jackson had on that whole community and his family, and that they were using that to create this amazing day for all of these families to go fishing together, many of whom probably caught their first fish that day of their life, and just make lifelong memories because of one kind of brave little boy who left a big mark on that whole community. So that type of thing. Get involved. Find a cause that you can get passionate about, or if you can't, then start one, right? Start a fishing kids derby and raise money for a good cause, or give kids the opportunity to just take part in an activity that maybe they wouldn't otherwise get the chance to. It just creates this sort of sense of meaning that reinvigorates you not only as an angler, but also as just a human being. Number 2 last year was clean up your favorite fishing spot once a month. And this is very, very important because we're seeing it more and more around here, just how bad the littering and the trash and the general disregard for our public land and our water has gotten the past few years. It's sad, especially around like city areas, the trash and the disrespect for our river or our lakes and our ponds. It's disheartening at times. So as anglers that get to enjoy these amazing resources that we have around here, we should do our part too to take care of them and to protect them, even if others aren't doing it. So I'm not saying you need to go out and pick up 10,000 bags of trash and save the planet or anything, but just help keep our water and our land clean. Again, you'll feel good doing it, and hopefully the fish karma will be in your favor in return. Number 3 last year was fish your weakness for a full day. Now, this is a hard one, but it's definitely a worthy exercise if you do it. So if you have a weakness, stare it in the face until you overcome it. And that means getting rid of any of the lifelines that could give you an easy out to just go back to your comfort zone. So I'll give you a really good example. 2 years ago, I had no confidence on an Alabama rig. I'm a finesse guy. Every single thing about an Alabama rig is the polar opposite of what I'm comfortable with. I like light line, less visibility, more subtlety, finesse tactics, lighter gear, and really coaxing these ultra-pressured fish into biting. And you know what's the complete opposite of that? A giant metal chandelier with thick wire arms and hardware all over the place thrown on, 20-pound fluoro on a meat stick of a rod in ultra-clear cold water. I had no confidence in that whatsoever. So what did I do? I went out 2 whole days, and the only thing I brought with me was an Alabama rig. Why? So that I couldn't sit there, throw that Alabama rig for an hour, get no bites, lose confidence, and then switch back over to a shaky head or something. I had to force myself to learn and force myself to get better with it. And after that first day, I'll be serious, I caught 0 fish the first day I took that Alabama rig out. Not one. It was miserable. I was so mad at myself because I knew if I would have just slowed down with a jerkbait or a Ned rig or something like that, I could have caught them. But I went out the very next week and I did the exact same same thing again. I brought only an Alabama rig, and I started to learn. I started to learn things like pulsing that Alabama rig to flare it out from time to time and get some of those fish to come up and hit it that might be following it. I learned that you needed to feel like the tick of the bottom to keep it low and then try and maintain that depth versus just blindly, slowly reeling that thing in the middle of the water column. I learned that you needed to put that Alabama rig in uncomfortable spots near like deep wood and snaggy rocks, and eventually I started catching fish, and I fished my weakness until I won. And now, because of those probably 2 fateful days and many more after that, I've probably caught more fish on an Alabama rig than most other techniques from November through January the past 2 years alone. And then number 4 last year was make time to fish with the right people. And this is a sappier one, but it's important, right? Sometimes it's easy just to go fishing alone. There's no scheduling, there's no waiting on anybody, there's no sharing water, no communication, just straight up fishing. And that's fine, but some of my best memories are because of who I was fishing with, not necessarily the fish that I caught that day. So just simply make time to fish with the right people, and it's as simple as that. And number 5 for this past year was leave genuine positive feedback for your favorite bait makers. And feedback means so much to anybody, but especially these small bait makers that are just busting their tail to make quality gear without the gigantic marketing budgets of Berkeley or Sixth Sense or Strike King or any of those people, and do it without trying to get anything in return. Small bait makers are so used to the only people reaching out to them or giving them feedback wanting something in return, like free gear or discounts or quote-unquote pro staff positions, that genuine positive feedback is sometimes harder to come by than you'd think for some of those people, but I promise you it will make their day. So just show some love, show some support to those folks that are making great gear without the big money kind of behind them in the marketing budgets. Phew. Okay, that is the past 5 years and 25 old New Year's resolutions on this list, and now it's time to get to our brand new resolutions for 2025. So I have 5 on this list that I tried to encompass a little bit of everything with: true fishing items, experiences, and then one kind of bigger picture item I think that'll make your 2025 more successful and rewarding. Okay, the first New Year's resolution for 2025 is to organize your tackle better than you currently do. Now, I took a good, long, hard look in the mirror before I decided to put this as one of the 5 New Year's resolutions this year, because I specifically worded this to say better than you currently do, because we're all different. I know guys that have everything labeled to a T and are organized, and it wouldn't be fair to lump them in the same group as me, who literally throws all of his lures in a pile or in a compartment in his kayak and just tries to shake loose whatever lure that catches my eye that I want to pick up out of the pile. We aren't the same, and I understand that. So for the already organized people out there, maybe your boat or your kayak or your boxes are organized, but your tackle storage in your garage or your room is slacking a little bit. Organize your excess tackle and storage a little bit better. Or maybe it's as simple as just you're organized, but you're not really happy with how your jigs are stored. Fix that. Or you're not happy with how your spinner baits are stored. Fix that. It could be something that small, but we all have room to improve on organization. But of course, this resolution is a lot more focused on people like me who, let's just kindly say, struggle in the organization department altogether. But believe it or not, over the past month or so, I've made strides in my tackle organization. I went from basically completely non-existent organization to me buying a Yak Attack Black Pack crate so that I could at least have some sort of containment of my gear in my kayak, to then buying individual 3600 size tackle boxes and starting to organize my tackle and separate my gear based on lure type. And you guys know, up until 2 months ago, I literally only brought one backpack with me no matter what I was doing, with one 3600 size box inside that I tried to fit everything in that I could possibly need, and then just a pile of soft plastics. But that doesn't work. I'm serious when I say I went to Pennsylvania to the Susquehanna River with a $9 dry bag that had one 3600 size box in it and a pile of soft plastics. bags. And that was it. And my other buddies had like crates and box systems with nice, expensive backpacks that had multiple trays in them, and they were organized, and they could carry twice as many rods as I could and 5 times as much tackle as I could. And I thought, okay, dude, you really need to figure this out. And when I tell you that it has significantly cut down on my stress levels for packing for a day on the water, I mean it, because no longer do I have to take 30 minutes to pack my single 3600 size box with everything that I think I could need for the day every time I want to go fishing. And instead, I just grab my backpack crate, I throw it in my kayak, and I've got everything that I could need already organized in it, and I'm ready to go. And now I'm working on my day boxes because I still love to wade fish and fish on foot, so I can't bring that crate with me, obviously. So I do need a system for single grab-and-go wading style boxes, and that's my project currently. But the relief of having my gear somewhat organized and not having to reinvent my tackle box and repack everything every time I want to go fishing is just a revelation that I wish everybody could experience. So whatever better organizing your tackle means to you, do it. And I'm taking my tackle organization seriously in 2025 after it kind of being my Achilles heel for years. Okay, number 2 on our list of brand new New Year's resolutions for anglers in 2025 is cross off a body of water on your in-state bucket list. And I thought about this the other day because of my potential of maybe having little to no vacation days next year. I realized that my trips are going to have to be close to home if I still want to explore new water. So that means I'm actually going to have to explore my home state a little bit better next year. And I'm sure many of you are like me out there where you just get a little too comfortable with your own area and where you live, because I do it all the time. I mean, I have like St. Clair 3 hours from my house, and I've never been to it because I get ready to go fishing and I just go, I know my spot around here pretty well. I'm comfortable. I'm just going to do my own thing at the water that I know, which means I'm obviously pretty good on my home water around here, I guess, but I've neglected so many other cool fisheries that are only like a few hours away that I could fish just like on one weekend day if I really wanted to do it. I mean, like northeastern Ohio has a ton of great fisheries that I've never been to, and I just ignore them. I've never been up to Portage Lakes or Mogador or West Branch or Mosquito, Pymatuning, or on the south side of Ohio, I've never been to like AEP, places like that. So this year, I'm going to change that. I'm going to pack up and I'm going to fish some of these in-state fisheries that I've just gotten a little too complacent and kind of ignored for years. And I'm starting to get tired, right, of my own water and my own area around me that I know too well, and I just need a bit of a change sometimes, and I'm sure that some of you listening are probably the same way. And no matter what state you live in, I'm fairly certain there's water around you that you have not fully explored yet. Maybe for those of you in like New England or something, you might have to branch out a little bit in those really tiny states up there. But for most of us here in the United States, you've got plenty to explore right there in your home state. And I know I do too. All right, number 3 on our list this year for 2025 is make a kid's day. And then I put in parentheses here, with gear. So this is so simple, but I promise you it's going to be one of the coolest moments you have all year long. I want you to go to your garage or go to your boat or your basement or wherever you keep your fishing gear and make a tackle box full of gear that you just don't need anymore. Make it with like a variety of things too, not just all one type of lure. Make sure it's kind of spread out amongst different techniques. That could be like that spinnerbait that's been sitting on your workbench for 3 years that you haven't thrown. Put it in that box. That square bill that you used twice and has been in the console compartment of your truck ever since, throw that in there and just make a full-blown tackle box full of your excess gear. And then, real simple, you're going to put that tackle box in your car or your truck, and you're going to wait until you see a kid out this year fishing with like a parent or a grandparent or something. So it could be at a local pond, it could be down at the river while you're driving by, while you're actually fishing. But when you see like a kid out there with their guardian, now don't go like, obviously approaching kids if they're by themselves or anything, but this is what I'm going to say. Like if they're with their parents or with their grandparents or with an adult, walk up and just kind of explain to the adult or the guardian you have a bunch of extra fishing gear and you wanted to know if the kid would like to have it, and just watch their face light up. Just try and tell me that the expression of gratitude or that moment that you have right there wasn't better than all of that random gear just sitting in your garage or on your workbench or whatever, and you were never going to use it anyway. It will make their day. It will make your day. And who knows, that kid might end up becoming like a fishing addict like we are, and that keeps that kid out of other bad things in their life, and it just sets this kind of domino effect in place, and that might be a pivotal moment in that young person's life. I'm not exaggerating when I say that fishing saves people. I've seen it happen many times. I have friends that can attest to this, and that little gift in that moment of you walking up and giving that tackle box to that kid full of baits could be one of the catalysts for like a lifetime of memories for that kid. So that's number 3. Number 4 this year on the 2025 list is make more micro trips. So this is a very practical tip that I think we all need to consider more often. Making time to go fishing does not mean that you have to take this full day or take a day off work or take hours and hours out of your schedule. Each day offers these kind of small, what I'll call micro trip opportunities for you to get fishing in amongst your normal life. So really simple examples could be like leaving for work 20 minutes earlier than you normally do on a Friday and then stopping at that pond or that creek on the way to work and making a few casts. It could be maybe instead of sadly sitting in your car eating McDonald's on your lunch break, use that 30 minutes or that 60 minutes to stop down at the river or a public park or a lake and fish with the bank access right there. I do this all the time in the summer. I literally keep a rod and a tackle box in my truck 24/7, and I will just like leave home for work about 15 minutes early one day, and then if traffic cooperates, I'll stop at the river right across the street from where I work, and that gives me a good like 10 or 15 minutes of actual fishing, and that's plenty of time to catch a few fish, put me in a good mood, and then I go to work and no one is any the wiser. And I'm dead serious. Like I am down at the river in dress clothes, dress shoes, and a fishing rod catching smallmouth before work. And do I get some weird looks sometimes? Sure, I do, but it's definitely worth it. And it just lets me scratch that little itch, get some fishing in, but not disrupt my schedule at all. I mean, how many times have you gone to like the store to grab something and you passed some sort of fishable water, but just, didn't want to get out or didn't have your gear with you or didn't have time? Well, squeeze it in. Leave a few moments earlier. Get home a few minutes later. Those sort of micro trips allow even the busiest person the opportunity to fish in between the other important tasks in their daily life. So I'm telling you, make time for micro fishing trips. Okay, and number 5 this year in 2025 for New Year's resolutions is to go to the Bassmaster Classic. Now, I know this is a big one. I know this might not be attainable for everybody, but I put it in here because for most people, I think it is a lot more realistic than you think to go to the Bassmaster Classic. This year, the Bassmaster Classic is in Dallas, Texas. And the one thing about Dallas is you can find a ton of cheap flights to Dallas Airport from pretty much any other airport in the country. And again, they're very reasonably priced. It's probably one of the cheaper destinations they've had a classic in quite a few years. It's definitely cheaper to fly into Dallas than it is Knoxville or Tulsa the past few years for sure. Now, combine that with a ton of hotel and Airbnb options, and you could realistically make a weekend trip out of going to the Bassmaster Classic and the Expo this year to experience the most magical weekend of the year for fishing fans. I mean, you could literally fly in on Friday and you could be out by Sunday night, back to work on Monday morning, probably for a few $100 total if you book it right. The Expo itself is worth the trip, but the weigh-in, the arena, the fanfare, and the best part, everything once you get there is free. So you just have to get to Dallas. Once you're there, you're golden. So I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I went to my first Bassmaster Classic in 2023, and then I went again in 2024, and I really don't think I'll ever miss another Bassmaster Classic if I can help it. And as a tackle junkie, as a fishing fan, watching the entire country of anglers and fishing nerds like us all congregate in one place as it just becomes, again, the mecca of bass fishing. And it's one of the most fun things that I do all year long. I really, really encourage you guys, if it's even remotely a possibility, or if you haven't attended the Bassmaster Classic yet, this might be the year to do it. With the ease of travel, the low cost compared to other venues, just take a look and think about maybe crossing the Bassmaster Classic off your bucket list in 2025. So there are your 5 New Year's resolutions for anglers in 2025. Number 1 was organize your tackle better than you already do. Number 2, cross a body off of your in-state bucket list. Number 3, make a kid's day with the gift of fishing gear. Number 4, take micro trips throughout your regular day to squeak in fishing. And number 5, attend the Bassmaster Classic. I think when you combine those 5 with the 25 5 New Year's resolutions that we already had on this list from the past 5 years. Hopefully you're able to make your own list of resolutions for 2025 and set yourself up again for a fun, safe, successful, and rewarding year of fishing. Okay, everybody, and before we let you go today, I saw this question come through the mailbag yesterday, and it only seemed fitting that we answer it before the year ends. So let's crack open one final mailbag question of the year, powered by Dakota Lithium.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast mailbag, powered by Dakota Lithium Batteries. Adventure awaits at dakotalithium.com.
Okay, I kid you not. This question came through yesterday from when I'm recording this, so maybe a couple days before you're listening to this. But the question says, "Hey Andrew, my name is Tony and I live in Tempe, Arizona. I listen every week and I love that when I wake up at 3 a.m. for my job, I can count on my Tackle Talk episode to be waiting for me every Tuesday. Thanks for thinking of us all early risers with your upload schedule. Now on to my question, although it's not so much fishing related as it is about the show in general. The end of the year is often a time for reflection, and I was curious what your thoughts are about this past year for Tackle Talk. I know you don't talk too much about the personal stuff and try to keep it to fishing only, but I think it'd be really fun to hear a little about how you think this past year went for the show as a whole, both good and bad. Thanks, Tony." Yeah, that question came through a couple days ago, and when I saw it, I thought, you know what a picture-perfect way to kind of end 2024, as this episode is going to come out on New Year's Eve, a quick reflection of the past year of the show. So, good on you, Tony. Great question. I think the first thing that I'll say, and it's something that I've expressed, I think, multiple times over the past couple years, is that if you're hearing the sound of my voice right now, that means that you chose to seek out this show on a podcast platform and hit play and spend your time that you could be using to do or listen to almost anything else in the world with us here at Tackle Talk. And that means a ton to me. I promise to you, I don't take that lightly. And this is the time of year where like all the Spotify Wrapped numbers and our end of year numbers are due to people. And I look at the download numbers and the reports and the number of listeners, and it just takes your breath away. And I know that in the podcast world, sometimes like subscriber counts and view counts and stuff like that are sort of hidden behind this shroud, unlike YouTube and some other platforms that have a lot more public subscriber counts and viewer counts. But the numbers of this show between Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and Amazon and all those other streaming services, it is very, very humbling. So thank you first and foremost to everyone that's listening to this, that's stuck with us, whether this is your first year listening or going into your 6th year listening. I appreciate all of you. But I guess on like a shallower note, maybe that might not be the right word, but that's the word I guess I'm going to use here. I think this year's been awesome from a content side of things from Tackle Talk, because I mean, we've been lucky enough to have some great guests just this past year alone. We had Jacob Wheeler on, we had Shan O'Gorman on, Ken Duke's amazing historical episode, all of those toward the beginning of the year. We went to the Bassmaster Classic and we took part in Media Day with some great interviews with Jason Christie, Ben Milliken, Brandon Polinick, Gussie, Patrick Walters, Hank Cherry, Greg Hackney, Koya Fujita, and then we did the full Bassmaster Classic episode covering the event and the expo, all of the new baits that came out at that expo, unlike I think anything else that any other show is able to do. And then later in the year, we had Alton Jones Jr., Kyle Patrick on. We went to iCast again and did our whole comprehensive review of all of the new products that came out at iCast. Again, trying to be more comprehensive than any other podcast you're going to hear out there. That's obviously our goal at iCast. And then we had Skeet Reese on for the first time ever. We had the great Mark Zona on, 2 brand new Hall of Famers in those 2 guests alone. We had Dr. Stephen Cook on to talk about the only scientific study that we're aware of the effects of soda on fish gill injuries. What else? We got to take part in Jackson's Memorial Fishing Derby, where you guys, the listeners, helped us donate rods, reels, line, baits, and tackle boxes to all the kids, and we made a $1,000 donation in Jackson's name to Angel Works. Thank you, everybody that helped out with that. Selfishly, I got to go to New York and fish the Finger Lakes with Bailey from Serious Angler. We got to go to the Susky with my buddies for a weekend trip, 2 places that are crossed off my bucket list. We had the ever-popular Swimmy Awards for the 3rd year in a row, but maybe my favorite thing from this past year was our 5-year anniversary celebration. That 5-year episode episode, which I'm sure most of you listening actually listened to that episode, but if you haven't watched it yet, like physically watched it on YouTube, it's definitely worth a watch just with all the guest appearances alone. They all have video with them. It's really cool to kind of see everybody that we've had the chance to have on as a guest over the past 5 years. But that episode is something that I think I'll cherish the rest of my life. And I know it meant a lot to you all, the listeners, too, where basically every single guest almost that we've ever had on the show came back not only to check in and to hang out for a second, but also to give us fall fishing tips. And we're talking like Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Ike, Jacob Wheeler, Ott Defoe, Denny Brower, Ned Cady, Dave Mercer, Ronnie Moore, Gussie, Christine Fisher, Kyle Patrick, Matt Becker, John Cruz, Drew Gill, Shan, Ken Duke, Matty Wong, Alton Jones Jr., Mikey Balls, our buddies Rudd, Bailey, Bateman. So many people came back for that one episode and celebrating 5 years of this crazy little show. So that was super cool. Probably the highlight of the year, I think, for Tackle Talk. At least for me, it was. But now our sights are set on 2025. And folks, we have some big plans for 2025. I don't want to oversell it, but we have some cool stuff that's actually going to hit toward the beginning of the year too. So I'm not quite ready to announce it yet, but very, very early in the year, we will be unveiling our next 4-part series, which I'm working on and currently recording as we speak. We have some really hard-hitting gear stuff that I've kind of put my nose to the grindstone and I've been working on. As a teaser, I guess, there's a big pile of rods right behind me that I've been putting to the test over the past few months, and I hopefully think that is going to be one of the most comprehensive and requested episodes that we've done in a while. And we just have a lot more of what makes Tackle Talk Tackle Talk. Unbiased gear content, great guests, real, meaningful topics that all have kind of an educational slant to them with the ultimate goal of making you a better angler. So 2025 is going to be more of what you love, just hopefully even better. So with that, I hope you all have a fun, safe new year. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review if you can. That helps a ton. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2021. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.